We are live and recording. So
Yay!
there's no viewers yet, but we're gonna talk as if we actually have viewers.
Okay,
um
we got.
We'll muddle through.
okay. Welcome to the Curmudgeonly Writers Podcast. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You got it.
Alright. So
Your
we
powers.
are at this point we are a group of 3 writers, but who knows what the future holds. And all of us write things, very different things. And all of
Yeah,
us
that's
are at least a little bit grumpy.
Including me.
especially this past year.
Yes.
Oh
agreed.
yeah, especially
Past
with
3 years, I guess.
Not been a great year.
So, my name is Saul. I'm very awkward introducing myself. Yeah, but for a quick intro, my name is Saul. I own the Twitch channel. I write dark fantasy, violent shit, and I draw stuff, and that's about all you're getting out of me right now. So we'll move on to my other 2 hosts.
So hi, I'm Mary. I write fan fiction, but I write angsty hurt comfort fan fiction that's about mental health. So take from that what you will. Yeah, I think that's all there is really to say about me is that I don't read a lot because most of my stuff is from video games or TV shows or movies. I just write fan fiction and I like my things. On to the other one.
Yes, that would be me. I'm DJ. I mostly write under the alias Less Than 3. And I write sort of a mix of fantasy, horror, science fiction, and especially erotica. Usually erotica in conjunction with one of those other 3. I've been doing it on and off for many years, but in a more concerted effort really just these past 2 or 3 years, which is how I ended up in contact with Saul and Mary and why I'm here. And I look forward to sharing my thoughts on badly written sex scenes, badly written violence, and, well, whatever else we come across.
I
I
have
look forward to
things to say about-
hearing your thoughts on those things. Truly. We have so many
Great.
things to say about that.
So many things to say about that.
So, oh yeah, I did want to say something. Mary, you said you don't read a lot. Just as a quick thing, because we are not elitist here. I honestly think that like consuming video games, consuming like movies, shows, whatever, is, I mean, I guess you're not technically reading, but you're still consuming writing and storytelling. And I think in much the same vein, it's like it still feeds into the storyteller thing that you do. So yeah, I think it
So,
completely counts.
My lack of reading is not because I don't like storytelling and I don't like conventions. It's literally just because I have eyes that move at different speeds and reading for extended amounts of time gives me a migraine. So
And
Yeah.
and there's
And for,
sorry,
it was
DJ.
also really hard finding a writing group that's okay with somebody who doesn't like reading.
Exactly. And DJ, what were you saying?
I was just going to add that there have definitely been times where I went months, maybe even more than a year at a stretch without reading a physical book. But I am always addicted to one or more web comics, and oftentimes I would forget to count as a book the fact that I was reading Lore Olympus or Saga or some other graphic novel. So it's all in there.
Oh yeah, graphic novels are
Wait,
like something I adore.
Then I lied because I do read those.
There you go.
They don't give me migraines if I'm reading a physical graphic novel, kind of like how fan fiction doesn't give me migraines if I'm reading it on screen. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this sleeve is gonna.
You know what's weird?
Oh, that's another thing about me. I sew. I'm sewing right now. The whole problem.
That's fair. I've noticed that reading on a laptop is like so much easier than reading on a phone. I don't know why. It's strange. I have like I don't know.
Maybe I'll have to try
I'm
reading on
strange.
a
Well,
laptop.
yeah. I mean, a really nice Kindle or or a modern iPad, like it's all about the kind of screen. Um, my spouse actually just recently got an updated Kindle Paperwhite, and I'm astonished by how readable and how pretty it is. It's black and white because that's that's always the style of it that we've liked. Um, but the resolution is great. It's got considerably zippier response, and I could see just sitting down reading a whole book on that.
I
Yeah,
have
no, honestly, I should probably get a Kindle so I don't have like too
full
many
book.
books.
I need a those like little like aquarium gems that are like they're like little water droplets. I find that when I'm reading a book, I kind of have to like take one of those like little water droplet gems and put it on top of the words as I read them, and it helps like my eyes track. Which is why I don't like reading books because it's inconvenient to have to like have it on a flat surface so I can put my little water droplet thingy onto it.
That's fair. So our first like thing, like main thing, other than our quick intro, is sort of like the deep introduction, if you will, like the personal one. So like, what exactly do you write? But like, I don't mean like genre or like the shallow shit that you see in Twitter marketing. Sorry, that's full shade, full violence, full offense. But like, I mean like the I mean, like, the kind of, like, themes and characters that you write, like, what are those and why do you write them and, like, what do they mean to you? And I won't go first on this one because I talk too much, so I want you two to speak.
All right.
Okay, I vote that DJ goes first.
Okay, I'll go first. Sure. And this is something that I think has changed for me over time. Like, or maybe it always was, and I've become much more intentional about it as you know as the details of the subject matter has changed. But something I figured out is, aside from the fact that I really enjoy writing sex, obviously, and that uh, that my work is in some ways a reaction to the notion that sex is just there as fluff, or is just there to make something racy, or that you know that it then becomes the purpose of the work rather than the literary value of the work still still being there in tandem with it. I i started to really have this idea in mind that that my protagonists are on some kind of a mission. They're they're actualizing themselves, they're growing in themselves, and that these erotic encounters are part of that. They're inseparable from it. Something that Saul and I've talked quite a bit about is this notion that uh, that sex can be character development. That it's not like there's the character development and then there's the fade to black and people have sex or whatever, or whatever level of content suits your audience. But in my case, because there's absolutely nothing that's not on the table. Um, those are scenes where people are being very real, are uncovering different parts of themselves, um, and oftentimes things kind of go off at a right angle afterwards. So the main whip that I've been on for the last year or so is called Sheldon Saga, and it's about this trans guy named Sheldon. He is, he is more or less secure in himself. He still has some issues he's working through about his body and about his queerness, and he has a bunch of, very much close encounters of the third kind sort of experiences, and just is put in a really weird position. Like, well, I could do this thing that is utterly absurd, and then what's the consequence of that? And you know he ends up becoming something not entirely human, and along the way is just I don't know, re-examining human possibilities. Not it's also, I suppose, not not an accident that along the way I realized I was bisexual. Like, this has very much been part of my queer awakening, is writing all these queer characters.
It definitely happens. Trying not to interject too
Yeah.
much, but that definitely is a thing. A lot of writers kind of discover themselves while writing stuff. So, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah.
That really does. I kind of relate to that on a little bit of a level. Not necessarily on the being queer thing. I think that me realizing that I'm queer had absolutely nothing to do with writing. But I'm not going to interject too much. I'm going to talk about that in my own segment. So,
Sure. Honestly, I think I reached some kind of a conclusion there, or I ran out of road.
Oh, okay. So you are concluded.
Yeah.
Okay,
Feel free
I
to.
use that as a segue. So I mentioned earlier, I think, that I write a lot of things that end up roping down into mental health. So I do. I write a lot of fan fiction about characters who I connect with, which usually ends up being either really troubled women or kind of edgy anti-heroes who have to learn to deal with their flaws. Or rather, I like the characters who don't have to learn to deal with their flaws in the canon material so that I can take them and put them in a different reality in which they do. My examples, of course, are the Cuphead fanfiction that I'm theoretically writing. I haven't touched it in a while, but I connect a lot with characters like Cuphead who have this kind of cartoony exaggeration around him that makes him completely inhuman, but also just connectable to my neurodivergent brain that is I like that. I relate to that. I too have zero attention span and no impulse control, and that also gets me into problems. So I relate to that and I connect to that and I want to make him suffer for it. On the thing that I'm using to distract myself from the fact that I haven't been working on my Cuphead fanfiction, my pet character is Anakin Skywalker, who, if anyone is familiar with any content, I'm pretty sure you can just acknowledge for a second that Anakin Skywalker also fits that bill.
God, he's such an edgelord.
He's the edgelord.
He's the edgelord. But then, in my little thingy, this little fan fiction that I'm probably not going to publish, but you really adore, that's completely absurd, by the way. It's just absurd. It involves time travel and fix it thick and shenanigans. But Anakin's character arc in this thing, because we kind of started with him meeting Darth Vader, which is great. Darth Vader on a recovery route while Anakin tries to prevent himself from becoming Darth Vader. That is my fan fiction. Anyways, without going into too much detail on that, the character arc that I would, if I was in charge of Anakin Skywalker, which I am because fan fiction, if I was in charge of his character trajectory, I would personally address the other more humanizing traits about him. That he's a mechanic who's very passionate about his droids and stuff. Anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that. Never mind. I like to look at people who are kind of just the accidental personifications of mental illness, and I'm like, that's me for realsies. And so I take them and I make them suffer and I make them go through their actual issues. And that's what my fanfiction is. That's just generally what my fanfiction is. It is things like, say, Anakin Skywalker looking at himself, being like, I'm going to become a monster, and figuring out how to prevent himself from becoming a monster, thus being forced to confront his character flaws and, of course, maintain mental health. So yeah.
I will say. Sorry, if I may.
Yeah,
from what I've read of the Cuphead fanfic, that makes what you just said makes a lot of sense about he's a cartoonish exaggeration, but I think it's like he's a very real equivalency to the kind of cartoonish voices we have in our heads sometimes. We're like, I'm gonna be on my bullshit today.
I think that the way that I write Cuphead is my own manifestations of what a lot of people in my life assume are ADHD. I look at Cuphead and his absurd behavior and bad impulse control, and also the fact that, like, in the Cuphead show, not necessarily in the game, because the game, he's kind of a non-character, he's just Mickey Mouse, you know? But in the Cuphead show, they kind of reveal that he kind of doesn't think very highly of himself for it, and I looked at that, and I was like, I'm running with that. I am letting him be his full ADHD and realizing that's slightly a problem self, you know?
Yeah.
And that is the entire exploration of it, is that, like, Cuphead's poor impulse control hurt Mugman. And it's making him face real consequences for things that he essentially has both all the control over and none of the control over. Which
That's really cool.
I need to, and, like, that's another thing about writing about mental health, is, like, when you have poor impulse control and these mental health issues that aren't just your standard depression, you don't really have control over those situations, you know? And I feel like when I'm reading things that are intentionally about mental health, I get really frustrated with them. Which, like, it's why I write my own stuff. Because if I read something that the first thing on the description is the X character with social anxiety has to learn to love themselves, I usually end up coming out of that being like, man, that really did nothing for me. And I think that that's something that I don't want to do myself, which is why we have characters like, I don't like to state in my universe what I think my characters have. That's purely for my brain. Like, I'm of course saying right now, right here, that I think Cuphead has ADHD, but I'm not saying that in the fanfiction, if you know what I mean.
Well, if I
Anyway,
may
that's what I
interject,
say. Fiction in which I look at cartoonish and possibly poorly written characters, and I'm like, okay, but mental illness though.
if I may interject for a second, what you kind of described is like just good writing, right? Because like in real life, people don't constantly psychoanalyze themselves and like talk about like, I have X mental health issue. Like, unless you're in the situation where that is the appropriate thing to do, people don't typically do that, or they don't like fully realize the scope of how they interpret things and how their brain works. It takes a lot of work to figure that out. That's what like therapy is for, and even then, that's like a work in progress type like thing, right? So your characters, especially if they're in the beginning of their development and stuff, they shouldn't like be going around saying, oh, I know I have X disorder, unless that disorder isn't a huge part of the story and the idea is that they've already kind of like recovered from it. In which case yours isn't, right? So you're just doing it right, basically is what I'm saying.
I will say, going back to this dumb little Star Wars thing I'm using to distract myself from the Cuphead thing, I did something kind of interesting there, because after confiding in the fandom and realizing that the fandom's fucking wrong, me and my roleplay partner, because that's the kind of fanfiction I'm not publishing, me and my roleplay partner were like, what if we just like take his main symptoms and make a personality disorder for the Star Wars universe? And then have the internalized ableism kick in, because we're like that. And anyways, it just occurred to me that I did in fact have a character acknowledge their mental illness after saying I don't do that. But you're right, it is good writing to like not do that. But then like it is also good writing to do that when it is appropriate to do that. Like right. If you have a character have a manic episode and then be brought to a psychiatrist who then addresses that, then suddenly it's important to address the mental illness. Anyways, if I ever write original fiction, it will probably be about mental health, because all my fan fiction is.
Yeah, like I say this. I like self-aware characters, but I will definitely say that there's a tremendous opportunity in having a character's journey to self-awareness be visualized. I think like uh, an archetypal example of this in modern media is Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. You spend the first seasons where you don't really know what's going on exactly, but there's this increasing clarity that something is very wrong um, with Rachel's character, and only at like in somewhere near the end they actually put a diagnosis to it and actually show the work that has to go into repairing her life and repairing the damage that she's done to her friends, to herself, to everyone.
Yeah. And I think that generally speaking, in a setting like Cuphead, where my setting is 1930s vaguely America, I think it would make it really weird to even pretend to try to address that it's a mental health issue, because I don't know about you, but I don't think that 1930s vaguely American mental health care was really a thing.
It
And
wasn't good. We'll just put it at that.
Yeah.
But if you have a character in 1930s vaguely America, and then you do what half of all Cuphead fanfiction authors do, and are like, oh, well, he has ADHD.
Yes.
Then you kind of have to consider that Cuphead takes place in 1930s vaguely America. Setting is important.
Yes, and also like there's the modern understanding of trauma is missing, which I think all three of us have written a fair amount of trauma in some of our characters. I know Saul.
Yeah, for sure. I'm writing angsty fan fiction. That's all I write is just trauma after trauma.
Me, right?
Trauma.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Trauma is an important part of hurt and comfort. Pain and recovery. You kind of need the pain part first, because I mean, I guess I could use the canon pain, but why would I do that? I could probably use canon pain, but like, why would I just do that when I could build on top of it? The other thing that I write in my fanfiction, and sorry to keep rambling about myself and what I write.
Good. This is the point of this section.
Plotlines that I feel like were neglected. Like if I see a cool concept brought up, like, you know, what's a cool concept that I like to expand on? The entire Cuphead fanfiction is based off of the Cuphead show. Had this little bit where the devil kidnaps Mugman, and then they ended the season. And then everybody had to wait several months, and I was like, okay, so I know in my head that Mugman's gonna be rescued in the first episode of the next season. It ain't that serious. But then I was like, but consider, what if we mix that one little big thing that happens in the show with the entire premise of the game and have Cuphead being an anti-hero about it? And make the stakes, rather than it being Cuphead's soul, we make it that the stake is that he's lost his brother. Boom! Suddenly we have a fanfiction from a pretty banger concept that I didn't come up with myself.
Yeah, it's good. And it makes it feel very organically. Like, it's not the canon plot of any of the properties, but it's very enmeshed.
But it's based off of character. It's all based off of actions that the characters have taken.
It's just kind of a mashup of events that are very much like known.
Yeah. And then like I'm also kind of slipping in a lot of the canon boss fights along with all the OCs that are being included. Like Ribby and Croaks make an appearance. Calamaria gets a mention. It's a lot of fun. And that's also just kind of like why I'm not writing original stuff, is because I kind of like my little fan fiction space. I think that, in my opinion, it is much more fun to be asking the questions like, what if we just run with the idea that Corky Kryze is a Kenobi and then build drama around that? Like, what if I just do that instead of coming up with my own story with a very similar premise of this couple have reconnected after who knows how many years, and then the guy finds out that when they broke up that the girl was pregnant. Like, why would I write my own story about that when I could just steal one that just wasn't written yet? So that's my writing philosophy. And
Cool.
I think that's kind of all that there is to say about my writing philosophy. So on to Soul.
Oh god, okay, I have to pause drawing to do this. It's easier to talk about this when I, like, am typing in a Discord server, or not when I'm speaking with my actual voice. I write, like, I think the baseline of the content that I write is that it's about things like bigotry and prejudice and trauma and grief and how they affect people and how people with those experiences navigate the world.
So a pretty big intersection between what we write, actually.
Yeah, so I'm having a hard time describing it because that's really, really vague.
That is.
But
You
to
can talk
use
about the subject
Raylan.
matter.
Oh, sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say you could start with the subject matter, which Raylan, yes.
Raylan, like the whole concept, like Raylan's origin as a character, his existence, without me getting too personal, because it really is, was I was going through some awful things, and I was playing Skyrim one day, and I was like, man, what if I made a dark elf necromancer who was like emotional and like passionate and not evil and very like anti-cruelty? What if that was like the baseline for a character? Because I have never seen one in my entire life, and I think it would be interesting. And then from there he was created, but furthermore I had to think about like, why is he like this? How did he get to this point? And then I kind of realized that through my own dealing with grief and loss at the time, I conceived his becoming the way he did through also like grief and loss, and then that tied into like his entire story. And like, not that he overcomes it because it's still there at the end, but he learns to live a fulfilled life despite the pain that he's been through. And then I double down on like certain subject matter with things like Garen's novelette and The Frost That Killed the Flower. How do I talk about that one? That one's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, a little bit.
But like the whole Sorry, Mary?
Oh, no, you can continue. I was just gonna say I love how you two are writing like really mature things.
Dissections of humanity and how horrible things affect people. It's yeah, I could, but like Frost That Killed the Flower might be like the best thing I've ever written, but also it's probably like the hardest thing to read that I've ever written. It's walking this line of like, it's almost unpleasant to read it because it's so horrible, and the things that like happen are just objectively really painful to read through. But also like the resolution, once I finally work on it again and I get to the final part of it with Glacé's arc, is gonna wrap around in a way where like the whole point of everything and like everything in that story is that despite all of the horrific experiences Glacé's been through, he still realizes when he's about to like kill the person who spiraled him on that path by killing his mother, that he doesn't want to do it, and then he doesn't do it, and it just resolves into that from how it began. So there's like a lot to unpack there, but
that sounds incredible though.
I'm very psyched for that, and it's not like the great literary tradition of the world doesn't have things that are very hard to read. I mean, anything by Toni Morrison is so hard to read, and like similarly, you're tackling a lot of stuff about bigotry and about internalized self-loathing and all that fun stuff.
No, absolutely. It's like a lot of like the stuff that I've been through as a person that I don't like talking about. I just go, what if I write about it through a very allegorical lens, and I make it a consumable story that perceivably anybody could read, and it's not directly about my experiences, but they're in there, and I'm like venting them out, where I'm like dissecting them and discussing them, and hopefully
Yeah.
doing it in a way where it's interesting and it helps people see something from a different point of view. So there's a lot there. But yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing about what I write. Like, I didn't actually think anybody would enjoy Value of a Heartbeat because the whole story is just like, as you put it, beat 'em up fantasy. It's just a very violent story about somebody who's very angry and very hurt, discovering that maybe there's more to life than being angry and being hurt.
Yes.
I love that for him, and
Yeah.
also for you and having a healthy outlet for your issues, because it can be really, really hard to deal with like internalized issues that are being, accentuated by external issues, like, bigotry and being rejected.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I feel like that's a big part of, writing about mental health.
I think
like-
our oh sorry, you can finish up, Mary.
You're writing the kind of thing that inspires people like me to write fan fiction, so take from that as you will.
You're going to make me cry, and I'm not sure that would be very beneficial to the stream.
I mean, that's something I really liked
Sorry.
about like us having found each other on the internet is that we each take inspiration from something that everyone else is doing. Like, I had to have read something like your story to be able to conceive of a character like Ares in Sheldon Saga, to have someone who feels like very organically and authentically an anti-hero because trauma.
And I like Aries, so that was good.
Yeah.
I also like Aries, and I very seldom read your work. Nothing against your work, DJ. It's just
It's cool.
not the stuff that I read normally. But every time that I have read your work, Aries is consistently the best character. So
Yeah, I feel like if I was gonna have a character like that, who is marginalized and has been through a lot of crap, they should at least get the good lines.
they are spectacular to read. So
Yeah, they're fun.
Or,
I think that the two characters that I like the most in when I read your stuff is I really like Sheldon and I really like Aries.
honestly,
But
good
like I
choices.
really, really like Aries.
Yes.
Very, very good.
But maybe that's just me liking violent non-binary people.
That's fair. Smash the system, smash.
Smash the system, smash.
We're gonna call the next podcast that. Thank you guys. Our
Good.
our next order of business here is, after that one, is our favorite authors. So in my notes, this can be your past favorites and your current favorites. So I wrote down like favorites from when I was a teenager and favorites now, and when I get into my segment, I'll kind of discuss like how that's evolved and how that's affected me. But I think that's a good baseline, is just talk about like who was your favorites and why, and who's your favorites now and why. And again, because I talked a lot, I will let you two go before me.
Okay, I'll let DJ open.
All right. Sure.
Right?
Well, let's see. I jotted some stuff down before we got on here. So some of this I think is no surprise, and it comes through in the writing, and some of it is just sort of good general background. I'm a definite lover of Robert Jordan, although I think my writing style takes very little directly from anything in the Wheel of Time. It's just like he's one of those writers like Tolkien, who is on another level in terms of the amount of content that, like, the size of the world he gives you and the commensurate difficulty of holding it in your head to read it. Someone I think I do take more direct inspiration from probably is Cory Doctorow. I've read a couple of his books, one being Little Brother, and a personal favorite being Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. They're just very farcical science fictions where, the setting is Earth, but they've, you're far enough into the future for things to have gotten really weird in, in ways that are very much in line with Doctorow's background as kind of a futurist writer, and just zany bullshit that results in strife and trauma. And yeah, and I think that certainly you can see a bit of that in Sheldon Saga. Um, I'm a very vocal lover of Chuck Tingle. I have like, even on my like most vanilla accounts on my Facebook or wherever, I'm very much like, you should all read Chuck Tingle. And I realized that he is, it's literal smut, but like, he's such an incredibly wholesome guy, and everything that he writes is very much in line with this philosophy of his about like making the world wider and more loving. And I just think that's incredibly badass. Um, I also, when I'm writing in fantasy mode, specifically the D&D ish fantasy background for the House of Ill Repute stories, um, there's a lot of inspiration from Garth Nix, and this is specifically the Aporson series, which just I really loved his depiction of the nature of death and the nature of undeath and necromancy, um, and like the kind of evil that it produces, where like you know a you have this human shaped black hole of an antagonist that is the result of what he's done to himself. Um, and I guess in a way that's kind of like Lord of the Rings. It's just it's that particular spin on it that I really enjoy. Um, I'm also a big fan of. I mentioned I mentioned Saga before, so this is Brian Vaughan and Fiona Staples. They created this world that is doing a bunch of cool things at once. Like it's about war and racism, but it's also about just joyous love and like in your face queerness, and that's been a lot of fun. Also, just I don't know why there are like robot alien creatures with TVs for faces, but it's the best thing ever. It is. Um, I also I'll briefly list some things I guess that I'm reading through recently that I like. Um, I'm reading Lady Chatterley's Lover with, I guess I'd say, mixed but more or less admiration for D.H. Lawrence. He's an interesting writer. I recently, and I wrote quite a bit about this in the writers group. I read Extraordinary Deviations, which is a short story collection from Raven Caldera, and it's just it's really magnificently bold in terms of like, here's one like ridiculous queer in your face story concept after another. They're all like, they're smutty, they are oftentimes violent, and they're just, I don't know, gleefully out there. Also, my wife and I are both huge fans of Lore Olympus, which just like a lot of the same reasons. Cool fantasy background. It's an interesting spin on Greek mythology, and the romance is just incredibly cute. I
I've
guess
heard a
I
lot
like
about
things that,
this too, so that's definitely
yeah,
something
I
I'm
like
interested
things that are feelsy. I've discovered that recently.
Feelsy things are very fun to read.
Yes.
People should feel their feelings.
All right, so I think that's my list.
I actually think Soul should go after, because here's the thing. My list of authors is kind of weird, and I don't know all of their names. So
I will endeavor to give a good list then. One second. But
yeah,
I'm
you,
like
you
I'm
have
like
like an actual author's list.
Right.
I have a weird answer, so I'll go last.
Can
so
I step in one sec? I left something
course.
off my list. Sorry.
Go
Oh,
for it.
I want to give a shout out to Octavia Butler. I've been reading the Lilith's Brood trilogy, and it's just so weird. And um, there's not a lot of like well-known science fiction authors who have gone there and be like, yeah, the humans fuck the aliens. Why not? But it's also it's got like a very strange lens on what is essentially transhumanism. We're changing, but not by choice, because we blew up the planet and someone else had to come and fix the mess.
Yeah, you posted about that, and I did read your entire discussion.
Yeah,
It was
and
very interesting.
when you do that to yourself, I guess it's warranted that you've lost some choices about what's going to happen to you next.
fair.
So, like what you did, DJ, I think I'll just like tie in my authors list to my books list, but not all the authors have specific books because I haven't delved fully into all the authors writing yet, but like some of them, like I'm in the waters, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, authors, just like, so I'll start from when I was younger, and then I'll go to like now. Just so you're aware, I was like the teenage girlist of teenage girls when I was reading books. Actually, so it's gonna be really funny to see the comparison list, but like when I was a teenager, I really enjoyed like obviously I read Stephanie Meyer, I read the Twilight Saga, I read not all of the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, but I read the first two and part of the third one. And then I read like every single Dead is the New Black book that I could get, and those are by Marlene Harris. I apologize if I'm like mispronouncing these, I'm doing my best. And then I was absolutely fucking obsessed with the Vladimir Todd series by Z Brewer, so there's that. My taste as a teenager was like, if it has vampires and it's kind of supernatural, and there's like hijinks, but like also like romantic subplots, that was basically all I read. Except for the deeper stuff. I read The Chrysalis by John Wyndham. I read that like 3 times in my life so far. I'll probably read it again. It's a really, really good book. And I read some Ray Bradbury short stories in one of his books, but I think my favorite is The Veldt. Like, that's like the standout for me. Who else is on here? I read like every single book by Mildred D. Taylor I could find, because we obviously like we had some for novel studies and when I was a kid in like school, and one of them was Roll the Thunder Hear My Cry, and I loved that book. So I read like every other book in that series that I could get my hands on. And I think The Land was my favorite, but overall it's just like a huge like recommend. Even like adult me would recommend them, not even like just teenage me. And then current favorites, which some names obviously you'll already know. I really like the School for Good and Evil series by Suman Chenani. That's like, it's just awesome. It's definite. I don't know if it's middle grade or YA. I can't tell, but I don't care. It's a fantastic series. I still like Ray Bradbury. I got a whole book, like just full of books and stories of his I plan to go through. I like Margaret Atwood. I need to get more of her books and like I can fully talk about them a little more because they're very interesting. And some indie authors, Gabriel Hargrave, which is the author of Orchid in Line, which I talk about too much. And then Shane Blackheart, who is the author of Everything is Wonderful Now, which I wrote an entire thread detailed about why I love it so much. So those ones are pretty great, honestly. Did I miss any books? No, I didn't miss any books. Oh, and I have to give a shout out to Thomas TCR, because he's the person that pushed me into writing again in the first place, and I've read a lot of his stuff that I can't fully talk about because some of it's beta reading and he hasn't posted it, so I mean, I can't do that, but Come Hell or High Water is really good and I'm about halfway through, so you have that from me. My taste in books now is definitely more like, I like things that have a lot more like deep social commentary to them, but also like I'll kind of just read anything. I feel like
That's
I
a pretty
scared
good
you
list.
away. That is a huge. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a big list.
That is a big list, much bigger than mine.
I spent about 20 minutes writing that out. It is not conclusive. I've obviously read more things. That is just all I could like think of off the top of my head in that moment. But
Well, that's fine.
yeah,
You read a lot.
I'm sorry.
We get it. You read.
Much shorter.
It's a problem. But no, I went from like quirky supernatural kind of problematic stuff to like these authors have thoughts about the world, and I eat that shit up. So
That's honestly super duper valid, though. Like, you have a good list of good authors, and honestly, everybody should take your word for it on if you say a book is good or not.
I will say, on that list, I need to retract, the Twilight Saga I have mixed feelings on. There are some genuinely problematic things about it. I just have nostalgia for it. But I don't need to get into a discussion about my detailed thoughts about that series.
Well, sure.
Be on another podcast episode.
I don't think we need to defend the valor of every author that like contributed to our experiences.
Yeah, I very much agree that we shouldn't defend the valor of every author that's contributed to our experiences. Soul, are you finished with your author list, or do you have another section?
No, I think I'm good. I made that and I just kind of rambled through it. I'm sorry if I talked too fast. So.
Oh no, I just got a good segue there, because my favorite author as a teenager was J.K. Rowling.
Okay, yeah, believable.
As a non-binary person and thus a trans person, you can probably guess exactly how I feel about that now.
Yeah.
I don't like reading, as I said, and I took a very long time before I was actually able to read because, reading gave me migraines. And the books that I used to get myself to actually learn to read was the Harry Potter series. Because I just really, really wanted to know what everybody else was like so hyped about. So Harry Potter was like my jam. It was everything I wanted in a story. It had your troubled protagonist. It had a fantasy world with magic and spells and kind of like a darker edge to it. It was great. Anyways, I can't stand Harry Potter anything now. So, we don't stand J.K. Rowling. My other favorite author from when I was a kid growing up, and probably the only author that I've ever gained like a loyalty to that I would just, if I saw his name on it, I would read it. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Rick Riordan? Reardon?
Yes.
Percy Jackson made Lucian die. Oh my gosh, I loved everything that he wrote. I still love everything that he writes. I did recently just kind of go back and start looking at the Lightning Thief again. And I'm like, oh, this holds up. And I think that of the authors that have influenced my writing, I think that he's probably got the most influence because, so a thing about the Lightning Thief, that is the first time I had ever read about an actually neurodivergent protagonist. And then every single main character just kind of follows that mold of they're all just kind of neurodivergent middle schoolers, which is what I was when I was reading it. And then and I understand that the reason that he did that is because he was trying to make them connectable to his nephew. But oh my gosh, it spoke to me in a way. And so he's still my favorite author, even though I don't actually read his work anymore because I don't read. But Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Kane Chronicles, and the Heroes of Olympus series. Which the Heroes of Olympus series was another thing that gave me a little milestone in because Nico D'Angelo, can we just mention him for a second? How many sympathetic queer characters survive through their YA novels and get an interest that is healthy and good for them? Nico D'Angelo gets his freaking happy ending. And I love that for him. Anyways, so, and then my other main authors that I really like, because how I was like, oh, this list is going to be kind of weird for me. The entire writing team of Avatar: The Last Airbender, yeah, they're my father.
Yes.
you saw that.
You have good taste, so yeah, we allow this.
The entire writing team of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Alex Hirsch for Gravity Falls. I watch a lot of cartoons. Dana Terrace has climbed up there recently as I've been watching The Owl House after watching DuckTales, in which she was a director on. So, just gonna throw out here that I really like cartoons. So that's my favorite author list. Rick Riordan is definitely the one that is the biggest influence on how I write even today, is that after the conclusion of Harry Potter, literally the only books that I would physically read was anything that he wrote. But everything else is just like cartoon writers. So like Dana Terrace is on that list. Every single writer from freaking Matt Brawley from Amphibia. And like I love their storytelling ways. Like, so Amphibia is one that like I feel things, but a lot of the storytelling in cartoons is visual storytelling. It's not like writing, but like it's things like, I don't know if a book can portray this as well as like an animation, but like when you have a moment of grief, an animator can just do some like amazing things like that. Like the visualization of in Amphibia, where King Andreas drops Sprig out a window, the animation slows down and like the music changes, and Anne, like, she like zones out for a second in like a moment of like panic and grief, and like she doesn't know that he's gonna be okay, and like the audience knows he's probably gonna be okay because he's a protagonist, but like the audience doesn't know that because the series isn't completed. But like there's like this moment of just like visual storytelling that like it speaks to me, and I feel like that happens a lot with animation, and it's part of why I'm so drawn to animation. I feel like there's moments in Avatar: The Last Airbender that do that too, because that's kind of what I was thinking partway through watching Amphibia. I was like, wow, this kind of makes me think of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But I can't come up with an example off the top of my head aside from like the Avatar state being like the best form of visual storytelling. Yeah. Visual and auditory storytelling are both like really important to me. Because, you know, irregular eyes that don't work right. But yeah, my favorite authors are frequently animators.
I mean, that's legit. There was a time before the fandom got really, really weird, and we kind of moved on. That myself and a number of my friends were pretty big boosters of Lauren Faust in the My Little Pony series. Like, for what it is, it's really well written, and I'll just leave it at that because I don't follow it anymore. But like, not for any fault of the writing.
No, and valid. MLP. So I can't speak. MLP is pretty good. Even their newest, like, MLP stuff is pretty good. I think if you're gonna get into that, just like watch the show and engage with the fandom as little as possible. That's one of those
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
that is definitely the case.
I feel like the only reason I haven't watched My Little Pony is just because the fandom traumatized me as a child.
No, valid.
Rebecca Sugar is also
My
great.
Little Pony fandom did in fact come and harass me as a kid, and so I stopped watching Friendship is Magic. But like, it was such a good show, so.
Yeah, like I know so many people who are traumatized by either like an acquaintance of theirs or just by the fandom and don't want anything to do with it now.
And that's really sad because it is a good show. It is well written. It is well done. And it's not the show's fault.
Yeah.
It's just why we can't have nice things.
We can't have nice things. And I was also thinking of Rebecca Sugar, who worked on both Adventure Time and Steven Universe.
Oh, Rebecca Sugar is so good. Yeah. I can't believe that I was so caught on Matt Brawley and Dana Terrace that I didn't mention Rebecca Sugar.
That's cool. We wouldn't let you miss it.
attach sleeves to a bodice. Heck.
Just in the middle of sewing cock. We're all like doing different things while
Look, I
talking.
need it done by tomorrow.
I want to just say, while we've been talking, if anyone has been watching me draw, I'm so sorry. I've drawn on the wrong layer like 3 times and had to go and redraw it on the right layer because I was so engrossed in the writing discussion.
I have not at any point stopped sewing during the writing discussion.
But no, I'm very bad at focusing. I wonder why. We don't need to get into that.
I'm a unitasker, so I mostly put down what I was doing, mostly.
I did
Yeah,
write my
you're
stuff down
smart.
too, but yeah. Okay.
Okay, you know what? What I need to do? I need to ask my beautiful, lovely mannequin Skywalker for help. I named this mannequin before I watched Star Wars.
That's a great name.
Mannequin Skywalker. It's the most original name that anybody could ever give a dress form.
You know what I
Yes.
just did again? I just drew on the wrong layer again. As I said, I drew on the wrong layer.
Okay, also add to my list of favorite authors, Dave Filoni. Clone Wars is current.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. That's good shit.
I'm a little mad at him though because the part of Clone Wars that I got to, the girl that I'm the lady that I'm cosplaying died. So,
Oh, that's always painful.
beautiful, gorgeous, perfect Satine.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways,
That's
moving
the fun
on.
part of killing off characters is risking making your readers upset and being like, why did you kill this character? I like this character. Then you're just like, look, I'm sorry.
Why would you kill this minor character who's definitely dead by the time the trilogy happens?
Me.
A lot of Clone Wars is looking at characters and being like, so how are you gonna die?
Like, I think I'm still apologizing to people for killing Daffod, so.
And I still haven't figured out how to kill off characters properly. I feel like the one person that dies in Sheldon Saga that's of any significance, like, I don't know how to make it be felt. But you know, this is the thing. You got in very distinct little bits of skill to pick up as you learn how to write.
Honestly, I've said the
characters.
advice before, but I'll say the advice again because it's important. Not the point of the discussion, but we can move on from this quickly. If you're like writing a character that you're planning to kill off, you kind of want to add this like endearing must protect quality to them. Not always, but it works. Because if you make the reader look at this character and go, oh, you're such a sweetie, oh, I just want to give you a hug, oh, I just want to protect you, and then you brutally kill that character off, it's gonna be felt. And you're gonna have people being like, why did you kill this character? They were a favorite. How could you do this to me? Yeah, the part 2 of that is make sure you're also like sad as the author. Like you are also attached to them. You're like severing a tie, and you're just like not over it. That's my best advice.
Alright, it's good.
I would just say, my solution to how do I kill characters is I simply don't. I'm writing fix-it fix here. My characters don't die. I'm writing the AU where they survive. This entire
That's
time
pretty
that
valid.
Team
I
Cos-
definitely like.
I have
I
been
like
writing an AU where she survives and deals with the consequences of her own actions.
I think in spite of all the bad shit that happens with some of my characters, I definitely like that is the mode I tend to write in. Like people may have difficult experiences, but I like seeing people actually live through shit and then like evolve.
Yeah,
Like,
I
okay.
fully believe that you shouldn't kill a character off unless you really think that killing them off moves the story forward in a meaningful way. I didn't mean for that to cause so much silence, but that's just a thing I kind of hold to.
That's good.
You also are like, you're also like writing like pretty dark stuff.
Oh,
Generally.
I don't know what you mean.
You're writing pretty dark stuff, so my solution to character death being I simply won't write it. I did a D&D campaign a while ago that's like not really a D&D campaign, but but I had an entire... We were doing like a D&D style section of a roleplay that we were doing, and the idea is that we only had 2 characters that needed to survive through the mission. And I was just trying to keep all of my supposedly disposable characters alive because I can't handle character death. It was a whole problem.
Honestly, you can write good stories without killing characters off, so it's not even like really an issue.
We did end up killing most of them. I was very sad about it. The RN gods said that they had to die.
I think our last order of business is actually just a conclusion. So, like, by that I mean, you know, final thoughts about the topic, about yourself, in terms of the overall subject matter.
Well, I think it's been very fun to chat with you guys.
Oh, we'll do this again, don't worry.
Yeah, it's a good start.
Gosh, how do you conclude things?
Yeah, I don't know. All I can think to say is expect more weird shit from us in the future.
I've written a few essays in my life, so I'm not too bad at it.
We have 2 adult writers and 1 person who is a baby about everything. And I think that's a very fun dynamic because you guys are like writing like adult stuff for adults about actual issues, and I'm just here like, so I'm writing dumb little fan fiction that's also about depression.
Your writing isn't dumb though. That's good subject matter.
I could just tell you about all these fan fictions that I'm writing and not publishing. And I would be a happy little camper the entire time I'm doing it.
Honestly, we'll probably actually do more stuff where we talk about our work, but I'll probably just like write and frame the discussion so we have like an organized way of doing it. But that is definitely something to keep in mind. So for viewers, I think we'll have these once monthly. So we'll stream them here, and then I will keep the recording, and then I will edit the recording, and I'll use our character arts and make it look all nice and fancy. And we'll post them onto my YouTube channel, so if you, like, miss a stream, it's, like, not a big deal. Like, it's gonna be... Like, you can come watch the VOD, or you can wait till I edit it and whatnot, but that they will be around. They're not really going anywhere. I plan to keep this permanently posted somewhere. Yeah, no, as for my, like, personal conclusion, yeah, I write dark things because the world is dark, but I sprinkle happiness in there because the world is also a good place. And I like a lot of fiction that kind of does the same thing and, like, explores those concepts.
That's a pretty sound, like... I think that's pretty sound, honestly.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I know I wrote adult content, but I'm not sure if I, like... Sometimes, I mean, there's definitely the stories that I feel like are pushing an issue, and then there's stories where it's like, well, the only issue of the day is which hole are we gonna fuck tonight, so, like...
That can be a real issue, though.
You know, sometimes...
required.
Yeah, so, like, I'm absolutely on the train of, like, some stories are just for fun, and they're, like, not about somebody's gonna die, and I like those stories a lot. A lot of my shorts are just, like, you know, 2 characters meet up, and, like, they have some kind of an objective that that they're want to get out of this night together, and it, you know, and just make magic happen.
And I mean, I like your writing for what it is, like whether it's deep stuff or fun stuff, because like you're right, like writing is an escape, or writing, I'm so stupid. Reading is an escape. It is for fun. You are supposed to enjoy it. But I also think that reading can be, like, eye-opening and, like, tell you about the world. So it serves, like, this dual function of, like, it needs to be fun and, like, a pleasure, but also it can do other things if you play your cards right.
Yeah, it can be fun and also be very subversive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, Mary?
It's been fun. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. I have some ideas for other things we can do in podcasts, but I will message those to you too.
Oh yeah, we will
All
plan
right.
these out. We'll give a month in advance so we all are on the same
We're gonna
page for
do
what we
this
want
on
to
the
do.
first Monday of every month.
Pardon?
Are we gonna do this on the first Monday of every month?
No, I don't know. We'll just do it monthly when we like have, yeah, we can schedule it, but I think for now we'll just like do one a month when we have time to do it, and as long as we give elongated time for us to get our subject matter ready to talk about, we should be all ready to go, and it should be like relatively organized.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna duck out.
Yeah, no, have a
Okay.
good
Bye.
night. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Thank
Yeah, it was
for
a
you.
pleasure.
thanks
This
for
All
was
right.
fun.
chatting.
Thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to end stream. Good night.